Welcome to MetroPlus Online. We know that Hong Kong is a bustling city, and we know that it thrives on trade and finance. But in those two that we just mentioned, in robust cities like Hong Kong, there's always cracks that show. And within these cracks, organizations, charity groups come into place. And these charities are the ones who take care of the needs of those families, individuals who are less fortunate. Today, we are fortunate enough to have one of those charities with us. And they'll be celebrating their 10th anniversary this year. Please welcome Pathfinder Hong Kong CEO. It's Kay McArdle. Hi, Kay.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm glad that you're here.
Thank
How's
you.
things been?
Things have been very busy for the last 10 years. We're now in a point where we've helped around 6,000 people and counting. So that's babies, kids and mums here in Hong Kong. So the mums are typically foreign domestic workers and they are pregnant. They're quite often fired because they're pregnant, which is unlawful, and because of the domestic worker contract. As soon as they're fired, they lose their home. Within 2 weeks, they then lose access to healthcare, they lose their visa status, and life can be really very difficult for them. So of those 6,000 people, around 2,500 to 3,000 are babies and kids, and the rest are their mums.
What's the core, really, position of Pathfinder, for those people who don't know?
Sure. So we were set up in 2008 with the mission of making sure that the most vulnerable children in Hong Kong and their migrant mums are respected and protected. Some of those mums, the majority we help, are current or former foreign domestic workers, but they can also be other migrant women. But the majority of our group that we help and focus on are foreign domestic workers, largely from Philippines and Indonesia. When we started off, it was about 80% from the Philippines and 20% from Indonesia, and that's then switched over the course of 10 years, so that in any year we're between 60 and 80% assisting Indonesians, and then the remainder fluctuates also between the Philippine nationals, yeah. And then we have odds and sods from, I say odds and sods, it sounds rude, it's not meant to. We have people coming in from Thailand, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and other sending countries as well.
Well, Hong Kong's not home for you, right, as far as everything's concerned. Well, it is now, because you've been here for quite a while. But where are you from, originally?
Mum is German.
Okay.
My father's British. And I was married here. My husband and I here. We had our 3 sons here. So Hong Kong right now is home. Yeah.
So now that you're rooted, and Pathfinder has been under your helm since 2013, am I right?
Yep, that's right.
And through this, you're more rooted, you're focused on empowering women, and this is definitely going to continue, because 10 years just passed.
Yeah.
What's 10 years in the future?
Well, in the dream world, it would be Pathfinders does not exist.
Okay.
That would be great. In that, not that the people don't exist, but that the government has readied itself for what we know is coming. And what we know is coming is that by 2047, we will have increased the number of foreign domestic workers, let alone construction workers and other imported labourers, from the existing 380,000 to the predicted by Matthew Jung in March this year of 600,000.
Yes, I heard about that.
And the majority of them are going to be women of childbearing age. And we actually now are facing an opportunity to prepare for that group coming in to help with our ageing population. So what I'd like to see over the next, ideally not 10 years, I'd like it a bit more quickly than that, is really a strong policy intervention. The legal framework is good, but I'd really like to see a strong policy intervention that sets out very clearly what should happen in the best interest of baby or child and mum, and indeed the employer. You know, how should they manage a healthy, happy, successful pregnancy within an employment construct? And having some clarity on that would relieve so much suffering and so much pressure. We have employers calling us saying, what do? I don't know what to do. I know it's unlawful to fire someone, but I don't know what to do. Can I hire a replacement? Does the baby have to live with me? What happens if I just want maternity cover? Can I hire maternity cover, or is that called job hopping? And the questions are rolling in, and I think with all of our expertise, what we'd love to see is the government saying, hey, let's do something about this, and let's set up a structure of how this should happen, so that we can ensure that every child is documented, that they are born in a safe environment, that mum is protected, that employers aren't suddenly left with a gaping hole when their domestic worker goes on maternity leave and they have no opportunity except to give up their own job or find someone else to do the work, which is very hard, because although we have local domestic workers, it's quite challenging, in fact, to find local domestic workers who just want to work for a maternity leave period. So there's that balancing of how to fill the gap when a domestic worker goes on maternity leave.
Well, you were just mentioning balancing as far as everything's concerned. Because right now, the numbers are still growing. And of course, the foreign domestic helpers' age or demographic is also getting younger. How do you sort of address that issue in terms of the growing population and trying to, of course, create awareness of how you can help them as the numbers grow? Because your numbers are not growing either. I mean, the numbers of domestic helpers are growing, and women are working here in Hong Kong, but PathFinders' numbers are not growing. So how do you actually go disseminating all these information to them?
Well, on the numbers growing, we're averaging at the moment between 700 and 900 new cases a year. We started off 10 years ago with 4 cases. So although the numbers are not growing anymore, we went through a very dramatic growth phase in terms of new clients or beneficiaries coming in between 2013 and 2016. And really in the last 2 years, we're saying between that sort of 700 to 900 new clients a year. So the numbers are not growing, but they are really quite scary and quite high as they are. So we'd like to see some more stabilisation or reduction in those numbers. Good news this year is that because of all the prevention and education work we've been doing with the consulates, with government departments, with all the NGOs we collaborate with, we have seen an increase in the number of women coming to us who are still employed. And that's a very good sign, because actually the worst things happen when they come to us after they've been fired, or if they've been fired and then trying to survive on the streets alone when they're pregnant with no help. So the more people we can get to while they're still employed, the better. And in terms of the numbers, we are going to continue increasing our education focus, our prevention focus. And in addition to those two, the strategy we've set with our board for the next 3 to 5 years is to have an intense focus also then on the third prong, which is technology. So we're very lucky. We just got a grant to improve our website, and that will be an interactive website so that potential clients and employers can go in and say, I am an employer or a potential client, I need help. How do I manage this? What do I do? And they'll be able to self-help, and only if they can't find the answer they want will they then call the hotline. At the moment, everybody calls the hotline, which means our numbers are very high. So we can reduce those numbers and then convert some of the current hotline calls into self-help scenarios with talking head videos in the right languages. That's really where we're looking to go, so that we don't only focus on direct service, we also focus on education and self-empowerment, so people know what to do in advance. I am a pregnant foreign domestic worker, what do I do now? I'm a pregnant construction worker, what do I do now? What will guarantee my baby's safe arrival and my own safety as well?
You were just mentioning earlier grants. And we all know that in this world of disasters and uncertainties, there's always what we call donor fatigue. How do you sustain that? I mean, there's so many charities around. I mean, just in Hong Kong alone, there's so many. So how do you actually, fight for the pie?
It's quite challenging. How do we fight for the pie? We firstly we try not to duplicate, so that we present quite an individual perspective and say, firstly we collaborate, which we do. We can't do our job without the support of a huge number of other organisations. But also because we're so focused, we can genuinely say we're not duplicating what other people do. And I think that helps when you're talking to people. And for us also, because it is direct humanitarian assistance, you know, it is food, it's shelter, it's clothing, it's baby formula, it's nappies, it's bedding. It is the most basic stuff. And that really, I think for most people, really touches their heartstrings to think of a child arriving in the world with none of these support structures, unimmunised, undocumented, unlikely to be educated. And it speaks volumes to many individuals and a few good corporates with some money to share. But it's not like it's a competition so much as knowing somebody who agrees with your mission. I think that's more the competitive point. You know, what network does a charity have? We're independently funded, so we are not government subvented. We receive no investment, as it were, in our work from the government. So at the moment we're independently funded by individuals and foundations and corporations, and then the fourth revenue stream is through grants.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, these are just part of your daily things that you run through in PathFinder.
Yeah.
And of course, this is still going to increase in volume, like what we were talking about. I mean, from 4 to 900, trying to lessen that in terms of the calls and trying to create from your grant to sort of expand and upgrade your system in terms of your websites.
Yeah.
So these are just a few of those things that will help you in the future.
I hope so. We're also working with partners on the ground. So the team have done 2 trips, so one this year to the Philippines and one last year to Indonesia. So we've entered an agreement with a fantastic organisation called SBMI in Indonesia, who when mum goes back to home country of Indonesia, then their representatives are there on the ground to make sure she has shelter and food and clothing. So it's like PathFinders in Indonesia, although they do lots of other things too. But we now have somebody who will take care of mum, because we had a few cases where mum was so traumatised she was going back and then leaving the baby at the airport. So we want to make sure that the babies are kept safe and looked after, and that mum has the ability truly to plan for her future and properly to integrate back into society. And then on the Philippine trip, that happened a couple of months ago, so met some amazing people, really quite positive, and we were very warmly welcomed. And we're lucky in Hong Kong from the Philippine consular perspective, because like the Indonesian consulate, we're quite close to those 2 consulates. They've been amazingly supportive. And I should mention Elizabeth, who works at the Philippine consulate, because she's quite unique in her position in that she is a social welfare officer. And having that aspect in addition to the diplomacy piece is incredibly valuable for our clients. She was very kind in introducing us to people and organisations who would be able to help, as was the Consul General. So we're trying to make sure that even if we fix what we can here or help where we can here, that on mum's return, if she decides to return, that there are some support structures in place as well.
Taking you off from the Pathfinder position as a mom, how do you balance it out? Because you're literally a solicitor. You run a really, I would say, a very important organization in Hong Kong whose focus is really empowerment of women. And you're a mom, a regular mom too, at home of 3 kids. How do you balance that out?
Badly.
That's nicely and candidly said.
I try to do my best, and I have a very supportive husband. My children know what I do and why it's important, and they're pretty awesome actually. So they volunteer when they can, and they are involved as much as I can reasonably involve them without pushing their faces into it. But they also know that after all these years, that my view of raising sons, I have 3 sons, is that they need to understand the female perspective as well. And so finding their inner feminist is one of my things to make sure I do, and that the way they then treat women and you know, whether they are their partners or their female friends, is always with absolute parallel respect and intellectual integrity and all those things. So I'm kind of failing at everything, but I'm trying my best at everything as well. I don't think there's a magic sort of golden ticket to doing that. You just kind of do what you can. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's nice of you, and humanly you telling us about how you feel about it. It's like you said, you're failing out of it, but you're actually empowering others regarding the sector of society that needs actual help.
I hope so. It was very nice the other day to hear my son choosing his first research paper at university, and he decided to focus on the nexus between gender and poverty in Indonesia. And I thought,
wow,
that's good.
There you go.
I thought, yes, there's a PathFinders future employee there.
It's not bad at all, man.
Not bad.
It came out.
So we're getting there.
It's actually your focal interest was like you've failed, but deep inside, there you go.
I hope so, a little bit.
He's decided what is important not only to you but also to him.
Yeah.
Now, as far as that is concerned, on a lighter on a sort of personal note.
Yeah.
When you got in as CEO of PathFinder, what do you think was the most difficult thing that you've ever experienced as a CEO?
It was trying to, well, apart from the fundraising, which was truly, truly difficult, I would say that it was trying to understand the highly complex and multiple aspects of law and policy and human situational issues that conspire to create a PathFinders client. It is the bringing together of various policy failings, various acts and omissions by various parties, and trying to understand and map that. So what I did to do that was I started writing down what I was understanding, and that then resulted in a lecture I presented at Chinese University, which was then published in a law book, really analysing why this problem exists. And then two colleagues amazingly wrote then a chapter about why the children are in this situation. And it was really that mapping of why is this even happening in Hong Kong? It shouldn't be happening. Why aren't we catching these children? And as we know, with any law or policy situation, when these policies are designed, they're typically there for a specific purpose, or if it's like a social welfare population-wide policy, we know that they're going to catch the 99%, kind of, somewhere like that. But there will always be that group that goes screaming through this chasm and they are not caught. And it's that group that, or part of that group, that we are catching at PathFinders, because the issues impacting the kids, if I just start with the kids, will be they have no identity, or if they do, it's a recognizance bail sheet because mum's an overstayer, and that's right. A terrible first identity document to have. They have no representation if they are asylum seekers, because children here don't get independent representation.
That's right.
They then, without a birth certificate, they don't have access to healthcare, they can't get a passport. And they are ultra poor, because I don't mean in the monetary sense, I mean in that they are babies. They have nobody representing them. We don't have a children's court. We don't have an active children's solicitor. We do have an official solicitor, but rarely do they intervene in our cases, or not enough. And we don't have a single body of children's law. We do now have, as of this year, a children's commission, so we're waiting to see what they're going to do, and I hope they're going to do great things. And then on the mum side, the aspects compounding her overall situation, which of course gives rise to mental health and resilience issues, is she's pregnant or she's given birth, she's been fired, she's penniless, she's homeless, she may not have her identity, she may be too pregnant to fly, she has no access to healthcare, and so crime then starts being involved. So you end up in this bizarre
web,
avoidable situation. So unlawful act of firing a pregnant woman leads up, because of these failings along the way by so many parties involved, it leads up to the woman who is a victim of a criminal act of terminating her employment because she's pregnant, being the criminalised person through immigration prosecutions. That's the consequence. And the consequence for her child, if she then ends up in prison and is still pregnant and gives birth in prison, is that child suffers a double whammy, all those things I just mentioned. And the prison rules here allow a child to stay with its mum until the kid is 3. And very, very few provisions are made for children in prisons here. It's 2 washable nappies a day. It is no stimulation or education. It's really not great. It's not a great start in life. So that's why, although we have our mission that I mentioned, the ultimate why do we need Pathfinders is to ensure that every child born in Hong Kong has a fair start in life. Not better than everyone else, just the same as everyone else. And on the healthcare front, that's the agreement we have with one of the private hospitals here, which said, look, we'll help. We help with the Vietnamese refugees. We'd love to help you. How can we help? So they bridge a healthcare gap to make sure that our babies and mums that we help at Pathfinders receive the same level of healthcare as regular Hong Kong people. Not Matilda level, just the same that everybody really should have when they're giving birth or when they're being born. Yeah.
Well, that's the success of PathFinders all these years, and we wish that you continue the success.
Thank you.
And of course, it may be continuing under your sort of leadership. If not, of course, another person may succeed. But as we are here in the program, we focus on women's rights too. We give them the opportunity to voice their sort of sentiments on how they are in Hong Kong. And we'd like, of course, to enforce that on you in the sense that if you need our help in trying to bridge that gap and continue, that we will be here for you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for being part of this program, and we look forward for your continued success.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. For our friends, thank you very much for joining us today on our very special day with our friends from PathFinder. Until the next time, thank you.